All right, everyone. Well, today I wanted to share with you guys the way that I build a champion from start to finish. Now, this has helped me tremendously because over the course of playing Raid Shadow Legends, and some of you guys already know this, but I started in April, I've made quite a few mistakes. And one of those really big mistakes is how I approach building champions. I've definitely built champions to 60 and 6 stars that I didn't need to. I've put in a lot of resources that I didn't need to, and I've definitely done things the way that they should not have been. But over the course of building many champions and playing the game for a while, I've learned quite a bit, and I've kind of developed a list of the way that I now approach building a champion from start to finish. So I wanted to share with you guys what this list is, so hopefully those of you guys who are newer can get a little bit of help from it, and hopefully avoid making some of the mistakes that I did. So with that being said, let's jump right to it, and we're going to start off with the very first thing, and this is probably going to be the most important thing as well. Something that I see a ton of people struggle with is just going to be this very first piece of advice when it comes to building champions, and that is to take a look at the champions that you already have. A really big problem that I think a lot of people get into when it comes to games like this, and it's a really big issue in Raid Shadow Legends specifically, is they say to themselves, okay, the next champion that I want to build Bad El'Kazar. For those of you that don't know, Bad El'Kazar is a legendary, a very good legendary nonetheless, but he is very highly coveted and very difficult in order to get. If you don't have him, it's very difficult to say to yourself, well, that's going to be the next champion that I'm going to build. Because you could do hundreds or even thousands of Ancient Shards worth of pulls and never actually see him. If you take a look at how many legendaries there are in Raid Shadow Legends, there are a lot of them. But even worse than the actual number of legendaries that they are is the chance to actually pull a legendary. So if you end up going to the summoning portal and you take a look at the odds, 0.5% for a legendary without an event going on, that means that you have to pull an average of 200 Ancient Shards to get one legendary, and then you could get any one of the legendaries in this list right here. So the chances of you getting something very specific, especially if it's a legendary, are going to be very, very low. Even if you're looking for specific epic, or even in some cases specific rares, it could be a while before you actually get what you are looking for. So you don't want to tell yourself, well, that's going to end up being the next champion that I build if you don't end up having that champion. It's really important to just kind of familiarize yourself with the champions that you do have, even if you don't necessarily plan on building them for a while, just knowing what their skills are, what their abilities are, what roles they can end up filling in a team, and just kind of familiarize yourself with your roster so that when you do actually plan on taking the time to go through the process of building your next champion, you kind of know what you have available to end up selecting from. So that's a really important one, and definitely a big thing that I see with a lot of people, and it costs people a lot of money thinking to themselves that they don't want to actually play the game or build a champion unless they get something very, very specific that they are looking for. Now we're moving into the second one. Speaking of filling a role, that is going to be very important. And this is definitely a mistake that I ended up making earlier in the game. I took a lot of champions to level 50 and level 60 that I don't necessarily regret taking to level 50 or 60, but there were probably other champions that I could have taken to level 60 before the ones that I actually did. And the reason is because I failed to follow this kind of rule here. When you end up wanting to plan a champion to get them to level 60, rank them up, go through the entire process, it's really important to ask yourself the question, what role is that champion going to fill in a team? And every champion in Raid Shadow Legends is going to be a bit unique. They're all going to add something a little bit different to the table. So I use Sir Nicholas as an example a lot just because he was my first really good pull, first really good legendary, and he's definitely very unique. He's an HP based champion, so he's going to be very beefy. You're going to put a lot of HP on him, but also importantly, he's going to scale his damage with his HP, which means he's going to hit really hard if you actually build him properly with a lot of HP. That in combination with his very interesting skills, he has a utility support type skill for your entire party. He has his, of course, unkillable and continuous heal buff, and let's not forget his auto attack, which has a 50% chance of placing an unresistible freeze debuff. So definitely going to be a lot of aspects and situations in the game where Sir Nicholas is going to come in very, very handy because of how unique he is. Then we take a look at other champions like Vrask, which is going to be even more specific in what role he fills. Now, the main thing that makes Vrask really good in a composition is going to be his cannibalism passive. Heals all allies by 10% of his max HP when he inflicts a critical hit. So when you end up building Vrask around this ability, of course, you're going to want to plan your gear around having a 100% crit chance so that you don't end up failing activating that ability. And then because he is also another HP-based champion, what you're going to want to do is build a ton of HP on him specifically for this cannibalism passive. And then every time he crits, which should be all the time with the right gear, he's going to heal your team for a whole bunch. So he's going to be a support type healer, and that is the role that he's going to fill in a composition. Then you get into more specifics, like Seeker is going to primarily be for his Tailwind passive, his turn meter fill, increased attack, really, really useful in the arena. You're going to want to build speed, and he's definitely going to fill a very, very specific, unique role. You have your buffers and your debuffers as well, like Razin Scarhide, who has decreased defense and weaken. Buffs and debuffs are going to be very, very important, especially as you get into the end game content where you're going to need more than just regular old damage. You're going to need a lot of utility, support, and buffs and debuffs in order to end up accomplishing beating that content consistently. So definitely an important thing to consider, and something you want to think to yourself is when you do want to take the resources and investment and build a champion, what role is that champion going to end up filling? So that's going to be the second thing on the list. Now, number 3, this is definitely something that I do now. I didn't do it as much before, and I also end up regretting it, and I don't think enough people actually do this, because getting good gear in Raid Shadow Legends is actually going to be, I would even argue, more difficult than getting good champions. Now, it really depends, of course. Yes, you can farm gear with energy in-game. It's still going to be very difficult to get really good drops from, say, Dragon's Lair or stuff like that. But to get truly amazing gear is very, very rare. So what I like to do, before even planning out and working on investing in a champion, using a bunch of energy to rank up food, rank them up to 60, go through their masteries, get their ascension potions, all that stuff, I like to just take a look at the gear that I actually have available, see where my best gear is going to be. I keep way too close to the gear maximum right now, which I really hope they end up expanding upon soon. Just going through, I'm not necessarily leveling it up right now. You guys will see that'll be later on, but I'm just kind of taking a look and seeing what my options are going to be and what kind of champions I can end up building, what gear pieces are going to work best with what champions, and kind of going through that process. So obviously this is going to depend a bit differently on each person individually, depending on what gear you have, but I think it's really important, because if you go through all the effort to put all the resources and invest in building a champion, going through all the energy to rank them up, level them up to 60, get their ascension potions, get their ascensions done, get their masters done, and then you go and take a look and see that you don't even really have that great gear for them, well, even a fully done champion with maxed ascension, maxed ranked at level 60, full masteries, if they don't have good gear, they are definitely going to underperform. So that's why this step is going to be very, very important. And it can take a while, especially if you have a lot of gear, to just kind of go through this. And once again, this is not the point where I'm going to be leveling up the gear. I'm just kind of taking a look and seeing what I have and what champions will end up being best for the best pieces of gear that I have available. So that's going to end up being number 3 on the list. Now, number 4. Now, this is kind of the point where, after these steps so far, this is where you're going to end up committing to a specific champion. Like, at this point, you can kind of go with a whole bunch of different champions. You might change your mind depending on the gear that you have. You might change your mind depending on the role that you are looking to fill. Maybe you know that you're going to do some shard pulls soon, so maybe you want to hold off on working on this champion, but this is now the point where you're going to commit to a champion, and now there are 4 things that you have to plan out. So you need to plan out the times to upgrade your gear. Now that's an important one, and you guys will see why in a second. Rank and level up as well. Very important too, and you guys will see why in a second. And then also, let's not forget that you have to end up getting your ascension potions and fully ascend them, which, especially if you're working on legendaries and epics, can be quite a bit of a grind, especially legendaries if you are not lucky with those superior potion drops. And of course, the masteries as well, which masteries is just going to be a big chunk of energy that you're going to need to commit in order to max out. So there's 4 things that you're going to need to end up planning out. Now, 2 of them you can kind of end up doing anytime that you want to. And then 2 of the other ones you're going to want to actually plan out a specific time to do them if you want to end up min-maxing. Now, I say that, and you guys will see why in a second, and that is as we move into the next step, which is going to end up being number 5 on the list. Okay, so let's do the 2 easier ones first, which is going to be your ascension potions, working on ascending that champion, and your masteries. Now, these 2 things can end up being done outside of events, because we don't have any kind of events that are really going to benefit farming for Ascension Potions or farming for Masteries. It's a shame. I wish we did. I know the developers of the game actually were saying that they were planning on a tournament that might be for Minotaur's Lair. I don't know anything if there's going to be events for the Ascension Dungeons, but you do have to plan the Ascension Dungeons a little bit, considering they only actually open up a certain day of the week, and I would definitely not end up spending the gems in order to open them up. So you do have to plan that one out a little bit. Masteries can kind of be done anytime that you have the energy. It is, both of them though, especially for legendaries and epics, are going to be a pretty big energy investment. Now, the thing is, the other two, which is going to be your leveling up your gear and ranking up your gear, and leveling and ranking up the actual champion and the food for the champion, these ones are going to gain a benefit if you actually wait in order to do them for an event. Now, unfortunately, the bad news is a lot of people have been asking about why I have so much silver right now, and the reason is I like to personally save silver for the artifact events, which actually cost around 30 million or so silver each now. We had them before, and I think they ran something like 3 or 4 of them back to back to back, and I ended up going through something like 90 million silver in 10 or 12 days. So 100-something million silver might end up seeming like a lot, but if they go through that same cycle where they just throw a billion artifact enhancement events at us again, it's going to go through pretty quickly. But I have not seen one in a while, and I am very, very patiently. This is why I have personally not actually been able to work on too many champions lately, is I am waiting for one of those artifact enhancement events so I can start leveling up a whole bunch of gear for my champions. This is why a lot of my gear is only at +4 or +8, +12 at the absolute highest, but I definitely try my best to wait for the revamped artifact enhancement events to try to get gear up to +16, because you're going to be able to min-max. You're going to be able to level your gear at that point, and you're going to be able to get the free goodies from the actual event itself. Now, also, of course, let's not forget the leveling and ranking up food. Now, the food you can actually do without having to know what exact champion that you're going to level up. You can just rank up common champions. A lot of people have asked me, why do I pick incubuses? These seem to be the champions that I actually rank up. Just from farming the Brimstone Path, you're going to end up getting a billion of these. So just because I end up having so many of them, I just like to choose these for my food champion. You could do this pretty much any time. Of course, you want to wait for an event window if you can, like a champion training event, something along those lines, so that you can end up getting more credit for your energy, min-maxing. Again, optimization is the name of the game in Raid Shadow Legends, but those steps you are going to want to end up waiting for events, and that is if and only if you guys really care about optimizing, being efficient, and min-maxing. A lot of people, you don't care if you don't care about the events. If some people, I definitely understand, the events feel like that you have to do things the way the game is wanting you to do things, and if you are not a big fan of that and losing out on a little bit of efficiency is not going to bother you, that is totally fine. But if you are going for min-maxing, 2 steps you're going to want to wait for events. That's going to be the leveling up the gear, leveling and ranking up food, and then the other 2 steps, which is going to be your Ascension Potions and your Masteries. Obviously, the Ascension Potions, you have to wait until the day that they open, but both of those you can kind of do any other time because we don't have any events for those. So with all that in mind, those are going to be all the steps to build your champion. And obviously, I cannot get into the specifics for Masteries. Each champion is going to be different. There's plenty of amazing champion guides on YouTube and on all sorts of different other sources for Raid Shadow Legends. Maybe I'll get into it in the future, but the specifics are going to be a little bit different for each champion. But this has just been, I guess you could say, a general guideline to building a champion, the priorities, and what you should do from start to finish. So especially to those of you guys who are newer to building your first 6 stars, kind of what to do, I'm really hoping that this type of video helped out. So if you guys did enjoy this video and you want more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Really do appreciate it, everyone. Once again, getting real close to 20,000, so thank you for the support, everyone. If you enjoyed the video and you want to help support, take a quick quarter of a second or so to like the video. Really does mean a lot, so thank you very much, everyone. And of course, if you are interested in more guides, videos, tutorials, and fun stuff Raid Shadow Legends related, they should be popping up on the screen right about now. So feel free to check them out. But if not, until next time, have a great day, everyone. And this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.